Welcome to Boundaries, next gen boundaries. Let's talk is really what we're doing tonight. Everything that I create is for you. So I only want to create what it is that you want or need, whatever it will be that will lessen your suffering and increase your joy, your sovereignty, your ability to be self-determined, which is basically why I wrote Boundary Boss right there, that book. It's all about becoming empowered in your life. So part of how this evening came together is that a lot of the amazing people who are on here tonight are people whose podcasts I did because I was promoting the book. I'm still promoting the book. And we really realized that there's differences in boundary needs and boundary struggles for different generations. So of course, what we talk about tonight and what I'm going to be offering you tonight, that's all applicable to everyone. And yet you guys have specific stuff because of when you were born and because of what was happening in the world. So we're hoping that we're going to answer a bunch of your questions and again, give you some skills. And it's really about community. We have to talk about how we feel, what's going on, where we're struggling, because that's how, right? That's how we get out of it. That's how we realize that we're not alone in this entire process of trying to manage life in the world. And when we talk about boundaries, no one really taught us about boundaries, right? We didn't learn this at home, no matter what generation you were born in. Most of us didn't learn this. And yet this is a language that we must know and become fluent in if we are going to create lives and careers that thrill and fulfill us, right? Our happiness is based on our ability to talk true, be seen, and live free, correct? Yes, indeed it is. So that is a lot of what we are doing here tonight, but I'm just like to gather and just be together so that no one feels that they're alone in this process. And I mean, I was really working to get it in right at the end of Mental Health Month. I was like, how many days left in the month? But we did it, which is super duper exciting. So we have lots of guests. I'm not going to be reading everyone's full bio, but I will be giving you snippets of information about who is going to be here and what we're talking about. And a lot of the women who are guests tonight have their own communities. So we have psychotherapists, we have relationship coaches, and then we have people who really were on the pulse of what is going on in different communities. They have podcasts, they have their own, so the panelists themselves come from an array of different backgrounds, but all with the same focus on empowering women and men, but mostly women. It's a bigger audience of women. So our first guest is Elizabeth Earnshaw, and you might know her on Instagram as Liz Listens. And that's how I know her, is from Instagram. So Elizabeth is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's an author, a wife, and a mom. She's passionate about relational wellness. So she started A Better Life Therapy, which is a relationally focused practice on the East Coast. You can find her at Liz Listens on Instagram, or listen to her on Good Risings. Her book, I Want This to Work, is available November 2021. That is so exciting. I want this to work. I love it. So I'm going to figure out how I'm going to bring on. Oh, she's on.
Sure.
Hi, welcome, Liz Listens.
Hi. So nice to see you.
I know we're like meeting right now in real time,
I
in real
know.
life, in front of all of these people.
I
How
love it.
are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. I was so excited that you're available and that you wanted to do it because really what you talk about, you being really a relationship and relational therapist, is incredibly helpful. So we did a big survey to see what are people's biggest pain points in this area. And what came in was people in relationships having difficulty stopping the people pleasing, the fixing other people's problems, and then kind of feeling used, like being the one that people come to for that,
Yeah.
and overgiving in their relationships. So can you tell us some thoughts on any of that stuff?
Yeah. So First of all, I think that stuff is really common, right? Like I work with so many people who they are really relationally focused. They want to have happy, healthy relationships, but I think what tends to happen is that we think that the only way we can engage in relationships sometimes is to be people pleasy or to be easy to get along with or not to be too difficult. And so what happens is the relationship becomes really imbalanced because we're giving so much to our partner or our family members or our friends, but we're not really getting a lot in return.
Okay, so you guys who are here live listening, how many of you have these problems of feeling like you must overgive, let's say, to be in a, a
I see
matter of me
me.
in huge caps? Yeah, so this is continue telling us because we want to know.
Yeah.
Yes, I do 100%. Okay, so the survey is correct because this is how people are feeling.
Yeah.
So when it comes to people pleasing, what do you think is like the first step? If someone's like, I know that I basically have the disease to please, how do we start to shift that behavior?
Yeah. I think one piece of that is I call it internal boundaries. I'm not
Mhm.
sure what you call it, but these boundaries that you have with yourself.
Yes,
And
I
I
do call it
think,
the same thing.
do you? Okay.
Yep.
I love it. But are you able to tune into like the sensations you have in your own body, the needs that you have? And I often tell people focus on the most basic needs because people who tend to be people pleasers will even like skip lunch, right? To do something for their partner, their kids, or their workplace. And so you have to be able to focus on what boundaries do I have with myself? This isn't even just something I'm saying to somebody else. This is my own ability to say, you know what, I'm kind of hungry right now. Before I go downstairs and help my partner with X, Y, and Z, I'm going to like finish my snack and then I will go do the next thing. So to me, recognizing those internal boundaries comes before all of the stuff that we might see on like the internet about what you say to people. Because if you don't know that stuff,
Yep.
it's really hard to know what you're going to say to somebody else.
It's so true. In the book, the way that I frame it, there's a big inventory that we do in the very beginning of the book called the okay and not okay list, where because someone is just saying, Cammie's saying the biggest struggle is knowing what my needs are sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that if we're raised as people pleasers, which I mean, come on, so many, if you were raised as a woman,
Yeah.
so many of us are raised to be good girls. And as I like to say, we're raised and praised for being self-abandoning codependents. So it isn't surprising that we have so many people in this community saying that this is a struggle and that they want to shift it, but there's such a worry in shifting it. So I love the idea of starting with the basic, the most basic, because if you can start taking better care of yourself there, and my 2 cents on this is really thinking about all areas of your life. So this okay and not okay inventory list that you can do, you're looking at your friendships, you're looking at where you live, you're looking at everything from the smallest things that we can change. Like, I don't like the lighting in my bedroom, it's too harsh. You can get, for very little money, a different light bulb and have it be softer and less caustic if that would please you more, if that would meet some kind of a preference. And we're really not even talking about needs, right? We are, but for me, there's gradation, right? Of like
Like
preference, desire.
desire to,
Exactly. And
yeah,
then moves into the bigger things.
yeah.
So part of it is just making, taking Elizabeth's advice and thinking about where do you fall down for yourself? Because people pleasers, we have a tendency, and I am a recovering people pleaser, and now you probably are too, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because we're
Maybe
all
not
good
fully
girls.
recovered. I'm still
Oh, no, this shit is a process. And I'm going to say, for real, it is an ongoing process, even if you do it for a living. It's the same way that you don't meditate for a week and be like, great, I mastered meditation, it's done. it's a discipline that is, it really does require us, just like going to the gym, because especially when we're exhausted, it's sort of easy to fall back into old patterns or dysfunctional patterns, right? When you're tired, when you're hungry, when whatever the thing is. So getting clear about where you're falling down on yourself in the most basic ways will make it easier. And when you can take that small step towards better self-care, just consideration, right? If you're hungry, you're like, I'm not running to do that thing until I finish my snack. That sounds so basic, but for so many, that is like a revolutionary thing, to actually put your hunger above something else. So is there anything else you want to say about any other points you want to make, relationships, dating, whatever the thing is you're passionate to talk about that you want people to get? Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the hill I like to die on is that a lot of people, I think, don't recognize that in their romantic relationships, that boundaries are really important. You know, when I talk about that, they'll be like, what does that even look like? I think people can conceptualize like what it would look like at work, or what it might look like with a friend or a parent, but sometimes it's hard to think about the way it looks with a partner, and also how to negotiate that, right? Like, we live together. So what do I do if I set a boundary? It's not like a friend where I can just say, no, I'm not going to come to that, and then I don't have to see them that day. I
Right.
might have to see this person. And so I really like to talk to people about how important it is to have boundaries and to respect your partner's boundaries. And a part of that process is actually tapping into how things are going with boundaries in your relationship. You know, how do you feel that I respond to your boundaries? Do you think I respect your boundaries? Do you think that, are you aware of what mine are? Right. And if you're a people pleaser, your partner, they might say, oh, yeah, I think I do. And then they'll say them, and you're going to be like, no, actually, I don't think that's right. But a lot of people you might find say, I actually don't know what your boundaries are, because you're so easygoing. And they might almost give it to you as if it's a compliment.
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
yes.
You're so easygoing. I don't know. You're flexible. I don't think you really have any. And so I really encourage people to sit down and talk to their partners about boundaries, and about how you're both feeling about the way in which they're showing up in a relationship.
You know, I think what is so true, and you guys tell me down the chat, do you find this to be true, where you might have good boundaries? Because in my therapy practice, I had all of these incredibly capable women coming in who were literally running the world, like actually running the world.
Had great boundaries
And
at work, right?
yes, and you know, entrepreneurs and like doing the thing, like really doing it, and then would be a boundary disaster in their romantic relationships. And this was something that to them didn't make sense because they didn't identify with having bad boundaries. But yes, so you guys feel this, that the romantic relationship for many incredibly capable women can be
Yeah.
romantic relationships because it literally brings up all of our unresolved crap.
Totally. And that's what I see in my practice too. I work with couples, and these women will come in. They're like, I don't have problems with boundaries. I can tell anybody no. But in my relationship, I am walked all over. I'm the one who ends up doing everything. Our interactions don't feel good. And it can be really challenging.
And where do you see the emotional labor that we see a lot of disparity in marriages, where it seems to be in the more heteronormative, like heterosexual marriages, that women in particular
Yeah,
do the bulk of the emotional labor of like keeping the ship of the life running. So
yeah,
what do you find this to be true in your practice?
absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest places that those boundary challenges come up. And it makes so much sense. We don't have, no matter how much you've figured out in the work world, you might not have had a model for how that can look in home life. And so maybe you've seen people at work set boundaries. So you're like, oh, that's what that looks like. But when it comes to home life, even though you might not want to live that way, what you already have been exposed to as someone who does all the research, all the delegating, all of the thinking and planning and preparation. And so you sometimes don't even notice that you're doing it, right? It's
Hmm.
just a role that you've fallen into. And so what I've noticed is that a lot of people in my practice, they both they want to move out of that, and at the same time they feel a lot of discomfort moving out of that, because like people pleasing, it's really wrapped into identity.
It
Am I
is.
a good partner if I'm not doing this? Am I a good mom if I'm not the one that's always communicating with the school? I don't want to be the one communicating with the school, but I also feel like I'm not going to be a good mom if I give that to my partner. So, yes, I absolutely see that in my practice.
Yep. Someone is asking, can you give any examples of relationship boundaries?
Totally. Yeah. So we have interactional boundaries, right? So I'm not going to speak to you if you're speaking to me that way, right? That's
Yep.
one type of relationship boundary. So your partner, if they're overly defensive, a boundary you might have around that is, I love you very much. I can see that this is a tough conversation for you, and we're not going to continue this conversation if I'm not able to really express what's happening for me and have you receive it, right? So that's an interactional boundary. But we also have all of those other types of boundaries. We have sexual boundaries,
Hmm.
that doesn't feel good, or that does feel good, or tonight I'm into it. Tonight I'm tired. I don't want touch. I don't want closeness right now. Um, Physical boundaries, different than sexual, but similar. You're in my space, or I have boundaries around how my items are taken care of, right? Time boundaries. So, honey, it's really hard for me when you show up 30 minutes late. I needed help with what's going on at home. And so we need to talk about what happens when you show up late and how I'm going to respond to that moving forward so that I'm not negatively impacted. So those are a few.
Those are actually great. And I think there's something interesting about the time boundaries with the lateness, where a lot of times when I was also counseling couples back in the day, that you would see one person would be um, late and be holding up everyone or just be holding up their partner.
Yeah.
But it becomes such a polarizing issue
Yeah.
that can like end relationships, because what I found over the years is that there's a passive aggressive control or anger element so much of the time if you're a people pleaser, and it's really hard for you to tell the truth if you're upset about something. That this is a way, because when you really think about it, I mean, years ago I had an amazing therapist when I was in this situation where someone was making me late, and she basically explained sort of the value in a way of passive aggressive anger being expressed in
Mm,
this way of, this person could never, it was too threatening for them to get mad at me. But of
mm.
course, since they're a human being and we were in a long-term relationship, all right, let's just admit it, this person is my husband, we're still in a long-term relationship.
I love that.
it's, it's like he couldn't say, I don't like this, or that's annoying,
Yeah.
which realistically we know there's no friggin' way that you can possibly have a relationship where someone's not getting on your nerve for some reason. And so when someone does something that they know somewhere is going to instill a lot of anger in you,
Mm,
really what's happening is they're disavowing their own anger, right? By him being late, knowing that I was crazy about time and I was always early, like, it was like the perfect, terrible storm of conflict around time.
yeah.
But it's like disavowing his own anger and
Yeah.
sort of shoving it down my throat, because then
Totally.
I would explode and he would get to be like, hey, all right, relax. It's not such a big deal. So
I was
now
the same. Yeah.
I'm feeling his anger. I'm feeling my anger, but it's like double. And so when my therapist explained it, because Vic has had a lot of therapy and I could talk to him, and I was like, you know, what Bev thinks is going on here, la, la, la. And he was like, well, I don't know about that. And I was like, well, I'm just going to make a simple request and tell you, I'm not willing to spend the rest of my life with you expressing your anger. So
Ah,
I
good for
can
you.
barely express my own, pal. I can't be doing yours too. And we were actually able to come to this point where I was like, listen, I'm going to be less needing to be 2 hours early to everything. I will like manage my side of the street when it comes to being weird about time. And then you're going to manage your side of the street. And if you have something to say to me, you're going to say it. And of course, be careful what you wish for, because obviously that only lasted for like the first 2 years of the relationship. And now he has no problem telling me but if I'm annoying him,
What the issue is.
yes. But, for some couples, they never get to the point of figuring out what it is, but that is a boundary issue.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Absorbing the other person's emotions is a boundary issue too, right? Like giving somebody your emotions is not respecting their boundaries, but also there's a boundary issue when you're having to absorb theirs. And that happens a lot in relationships where one person is like, I'm tough. I can take it. I can handle it. I'll just suck it up. It's less upsetting to me than it is to them. But then what tends to happen is then you jump to the other side and you start to think, well, they've made me uncomfortable for so long. I'm going to make them uncomfortable. And I might do it directly, or I might do it indirectly by accidentally being late or whatever it is, but they're going to absorb the same discomfort that I feel. And
Exactly.
that is a boundary violation.
It sure is. I want to say thank you so much for spending time with us. It was so nice to have you.
It was so great to be
Tell our
here.
people where they can find you.
Yeah. So I am Liz Earnshaw. The easiest place to find me is at Liz Listens on all of the social platforms, except for Twitter, where there's a dash between Liz and Listen, because somebody took my name.
Bastards.
I know, assholes. But yeah, that's the easiest place to find me. So if you'd like to connect, I will be there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you, Elizabeth.
Bye, everybody.
See ya. So what I wanted to say, because people are talking about this before our next person comes on, that was so amazing. Go follow Liz Listens. She's great. Is people are talking about being an empath or being a highly sensitive person. So do any of you identify with being an empath or a highly sensitive person? That's what I want to know. Okay, so we have a lot of empaths in the house. Okay, so and me too. So I totally get it. And it is important. And it does complicate our efforts in creating healthy boundaries, because we have to get really clear about what are our own emotions and what are someone else's. So the way that I teach it, the way I talk about it in the book is, we have to be clear about what is our side of the street, what is someone else's side of the street, because so much of disordered boundaries when it comes to codependency has to do with not knowing what side of the street you're supposed to be on, feeling overly responsible for the situations, right, that the people that you love are in, their decisions, their circumstances, feeling like you must fix it. And that right there is a disordered emotional boundary, right? Because the only life that you can fix and or save is your own. And it doesn't mean we can't be loving, right? We can be loving and be supportive and ask someone what they think they should do. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to check your urgency. If your sister, your lover, your friend is in a situation and you suddenly feel an urgency to fix it, like you are feverishly Googling things and calling friends and trying to bring in if you're doing that, that urgency you're feeling is a codependent response to someone that you love being in pain. But if you can remember, right, just check your urgency, because it's one thing to be concerned, to feel a little constriction, those things, that is normal, because when we love people, right, we don't want them to be in pain. But it's like we don't want it to be that we are trying to fix them, because the truth is that is, codependency at its core, and then I'm going to tell you about our next guest, is an overt or covert bid for control. We don't want those people we love to make that mistake. We don't want them to stay in that bad, abusive relationship. We don't want them to waste their money on drugs. We don't want them, right? But the truth is, those are not our decisions to make. So we have to create boundaries for ourselves so we're not leaking all of our energy and emotional bandwidth, which so many empaths and highly sensitive people do, on the wrong side of the street. Because here's the thing, it isn't like people will thank you for it, because they won't. It's a dysfunctional, disordered boundary. And people will become resentful. Yeah, they're happy if you're overfunctioning and overgiving, but they're not going to take your advice, right? You're going to give amazing advice, did all this research, talk to your friends, set them up with a specialist, whatever. They're not doing it until they're ready to do it because it's their life. So, but it does track with disordered boundaries. So I'm so excited. Lindsay from Almost 30 is our next guest. How many of you listened to the podcast Almost 30 with Lindsay and Krista? Anybody? People love it. I see it. I knew you did. Lots of fans. I'm a fan too. I met them because I did something on their show. So this is what Lindsay does. She's the co-host of Almost 30 with Krista. Feels super blessed to be doing lots of things that she loves. She's also a performer. She's a singer, but they really also have created a community to empower women. So that's how I see you, Linz, that's what I see you doing. So come on up. Hi, friend.
Hi, Terri. How are
you? I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. It's so good. It's so comforting to see your face. I hopped on a little early and I was like, oh, okay.
Everything is right with the world.
Truly.
Well, we have lots of Almost 30 fans here. And it is so the whole event, you guys were sort of on the ground floor of helping me pull it together, because when we were talking, we went deep on that podcast. Oh my God. And you were like, wow, our community needs this so much. But then we started seeing that your community had some different stuff that was specific to the phase of life that you guys are in. And so Krista just got married. You are with your love. I think you're engaged as well. Yeah.
Not yet. Coming up. Okay. I think coming up. We'll see.
But you feel like he's your forever person.
Absolutely. Yeah. We just moved in together.
Okay. So we're moving in that direction. So when we were on the show, we talked a little bit about boundaries with family of origin as we're sort of negotiating this transition from like single person to being more partnered, to sort of being more grown up. So I want to ask our people who are here, do you guys have any problems with boundaries with your family of origin? Anybody? Oh, I think they do. Yes, of course. Yeah. Mothers, fathers, stepmothers, blended families, siblings, and even your partner's family too. Like, but family of origin is sort of specific. So I thought, because you guys are on the pulse, all of the influencers that I brought in, I don't love the word influencer, but it's the truth. I mean, that is what it is. But you have more skills than that, because sometimes influencers, you think, what are you doing? But you're doing lots of things. But you really are close with this community. So what do you see? And what is your own struggle with your family of origin as you transition to this next phase of your life?
Yeah. You know, we started Almost 30 based on this transition from your 20s to your 30s, the Saturn return, where there's usually a major life event or a few of them that just push you to get serious about your life. And if anything is out of alignment, from my experience, it is going to be like right in your face, almost unavoidable, to either fix it, process, work through, or have a conversation about it. And so what we've seen and heard in our community is these big transitions oftentimes either bring to the surface or bring to their awareness the codependency with their families or the enmeshment, because they are finally making the decision for themselves or finally being themselves. And I think that's what I'm experiencing personally in this season of my life, where I've made some really big decisions lately for me. And what it felt like was a betrayal to my family.
Mm.
And I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And so I'm the second mom. I'm the mediator. I'm the peacekeeper. I help people in my family, help people from my perspective. And I felt that feeling of shame because it felt selfish. It felt, yeah, like I was disrupting the family system,
Mm.
even though this decision has made me incredibly happy. I still kind of have a little bit of a cloud over here where I feel like, oh, they don't approve. They don't get it. They're not happy for me. They have a problem with it. They're uncomfortable.
Mm. Okay, so my question about this is the way that you're feeling, are your family of origin, your folks, are they actively doing this? Or do you think it's a narrative? Meaning, are they like, well, we would prefer you do this, or we don't really get it? So have they voiced disapproval?
Um, for example, they said to me, well, it just seems like you're giving up everything to be in New York. So they have this idea, and perhaps it's from their own experience of sacrifice for a partner or family, where they've given up so much. And what I had to do in that moment was like update them. I was like, oh, that's what you really believe. Well, I'm actually not giving up anything, and I'm gaining so much on top of that. But it feels like a lot of projections
Mm.
without asking questions to get more information. Maybe that's what I need, is more questions and inquiry and curiosity rather than the judgment
Yep.
and the projection.
You know what I think, and a lot of people in the comments are like me too, the same. So we know that this is going on, but what we're really talking about is this is like a second almost separating and individuating
Yes.
from the family system. And if the family system was enmeshed, if you were the second mom, if you had a lot of sort of adult responsibilities because of the way the family system was organized,
Mm-hmm.
it really makes sense that you're kind of like checking, like, is everything okay? Is everything okay? And I think there's a loyalty thing that I've seen many times as we really leave that position of hero child, helper, fixer, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of things that we can name it. But when you had a lot of responsibility in your family of origin, that as you are breaking away, there is this split loyalty of who am I loyal to? And I remember having this conversation with my sister when I was marrying my family, because I married a widower with 3 teenage sons. And I was also the hero child, even though I was the youngest, but I was the designated oldest in my family. It was the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my sister Kathy saying to me, Tara, Vic and the boys are your first family now, your top priority now. Like, don't worry about the family. You've waited your whole life for these people. Like, these are your people. Like,
Yeah.
don't feel like you got to overfunction over here. Now, that was a nice conversation. My mother also sort of reiterated it. And I still felt, the reason I asked you about how active your parents were in this process of how you were feeling is because I felt like I was doing a lot of it to myself, like in my own mind, where once you have a role, it's like your childhood role. And all of us, every single one of you here, everyone watching this after the fact, we all have roles. Like family systems and family systems theory, it's like we play parts,
Yes.
even in healthy families. So people think, oh, well, it's only in like alcoholic families, right? Mine happen to be that too, but that's it's not only that. It's like we all have roles that we play. So I think that is something that to really think about. Like we're shifting, and that our loyalty is going to go to the family we're creating, and we can still be loyal and loving to our family of origin. So what else do you see in your community as things that people are struggling with at this transition, the sort of almost 30, now over 30, but transition?
Yes. Another one that comes to mind and something that I've been really working on this last year, and same with Krista, is speaking our truth. So whether it's to our family, people we love, our friends, even publicly, because we are in the public eye. And especially, I feel like with the women in our community, there has been some conditioning, whether it's in their personal lives or maybe in school or where they grew up, at least in my experience, where to speak my truth was impolite, was inappropriate, was too much.
Anyone else, you guys? Did you guys learn this? That be a good girl, don't be rude,
Yes.
don't make waves. Yes, everyone's like, yep, 100%. Okay, yes.
And then
Continue.
when I've had experiences where I have shared my truth and it wasn't received in the way that I had hoped, had those expectations. And then because of that experience, I would kind of go back into my shell and my facade of, only saying part of the truth or saying what I thought people wanted to hear. And so it's been outside of my comfort zone in the last year to be saying exactly how I feel, especially to people I love. And it's been really healing in my relationship with Sean because he's only after the truth. And it's been healing to say exactly how I feel and have him listen, receive, and still love me. It sounds crazy where I thought, someone would run away because I spoke my truth, but that was kind of how it felt in my body. And so I just try to practice it as much as possible.
That is a huge thing. And a lot of people are identifying with the partial truth, the lie by omission, the only, and I was also in my 20s, certainly the queen of, because if you're a highly sensitive person, you're also able to read the room and read the people like instantly. So the moment there's like a flicker of disapproval, I'm leaning to go make that truth be slightly different because maybe that won't be a problem,
Yes.
But it's amazing. I mean, to have that intuition and having the courage to learn to, as my subtitle says, talk true, how it shifts something within you, because the moment you get committed to talking true, you're literally shifting what's happening. You are inviting the people you love to know you, to like actually know you. And when we think about this in respect to boundaries, which are your preferences, your desires, your limits, your deal breakers, according to me, that those are literally the things that make you uniquely you. So it also is dispelling the notion that not having a preference, you know me, it's all good, whatever you want, minimizing even our own friggin' preferences, that you're really doing a disservice to yourself, to the people you love. What I also find interesting, though, is from your stories, like you get on this path, you do all this research, you interview all of these people, so much of what you and Krista talk about on the show, it's all about, evolution and fun and lots of other things, but there's a lot of mental health and health aspects to the show. And it's like, as you move into that space of wanting more truth, of getting committed to that, and drawing someone into your life who is interested in the truth and not the mask. Because the thing is, like attracts like. And so that's really it's so beautiful to be able to do that,
Yes.
So
I noticed when I was wearing the mask,
Yeah.
In my I was single for 7 years. And when I was, dating people and I wasn't being myself, I was attracting those that were not for me. I was sending these very mixed signals energetically. It was confusing. And
Mm.
so anytime now that I slip back into maybe sharing a half truth, I know it's happening immediately because the person is automatically confused, because they know me so
Right.
well. And so
Yep.
it's actually good feedback in the moment. It becomes very, very obvious.
Right. You're like, oh, so there's questions. Can I have examples of that speaking the truth? I often keep quiet about behaviors others have that make me very uncomfortable. But the thing is that that's their side of the street, right? Is the question.
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, you give me your 2 cents on that, Linz.
Yeah, an example of that for me is, I don't like the feeling of disagreeing with someone because my Libra rising is like, well, I can see both sides. But I feel like it's so important, not only for like our own inner working, but also for the other person to share how we feel about something. So Sean and I will oftentimes um, chat about work, whether it's my work or his work. It's nice at the end of the day to kind of like have someone who's not in it with you.
Right.
And there are often times when I'm listening to him and I don't fully agree with either what he's saying about a particular situation. And so, what it feels like to me is truly listening to the other person, taking a breath and leaving a
Hmm.
little bit of space, literally breathing into my belly. I have to make it physical because I will leave my body sometimes. I will kind
Hmm.
of get a little nervous. So I have to ground myself. I'll take a deep breath and it's just, acknowledging and validating how they're feeling and then sharing your observations in a very true way and not worrying about how it will be received, knowing that if it's from a place of love and care, that person will be able to receive it. And if they don't and they take it personally or they take it the wrong way, I know now that it's not anything to do with me. And that's a starting point for maybe a little growth moment between me and that person, and me and Sean in particular. Um, but I think it's healthy to disagree with someone. It doesn't mean that you're going to fight, that you won't like each other, that the person
Hmm.
will leave you. I think it's a really healthy part of a relationship.
I think that rules of engagement, like that, it's very important that there's sort of agreed upon rules of engagement. So if you and Sean know, like we're both free to, if I'm saying something and you have a thought about it, I'm interested in that thought. A lot of times I will ask, hey, I have a thought about what you just told me. Are you open to hearing it? Because sometimes, I want to be clear. I mean, Vic is a Pisces and he's pretty mellow, so he's not venting much. Like usually we're talking for a reason, but with my friends, I'll be like, hey, are are we brainstorming something, or do you just want me to listen, compassionately? Like what is it? How can I best support you right now? The more that I can ask those questions, the more I feel like I respect the
Mm-hmm.
people that I love. Excuse me. So I think that it's great to be able to, because I also want Vic to tell me if he disagrees with what I'm doing, or if he thinks like I'm looking at it um, sort of the wrong way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, Sean will say often, like, do you want me to listen or do you want my feedback? And and you're right. It's so nice. It kind of disarms me. It gives me the choice. It reminds me that I
Hmm.
have a choice.
Yep,
And it almost like opens my heart because I think that is just a kind thing to do is to ask.
it
So
is. It's
yeah, I
loving,
love that.
right? You feel considered. Okay, so I want to. Where can people find you? Tell us that.
Thank you for having me. They can find Almost 30 anywhere podcasts are listened to. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can go to almost30.com. On Instagram, Almost 30 Podcasts. And I'm at Lindsay Simsick on Instagram. Feel free to DM me. anytime. I love chatting with you all, and I just love these questions and comments. This is so powerful, Terri. I really appreciate this. I learned a lot.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being with me. I super appreciate you, and I will see you soon.
Sounds great, Terri. Bye.
All right. So you guys, that was amazing. She's so great. And really, they are on the pulse of what is happening. So I want to hear from you guys about speaking your truth. So the difficulty, I'll give you an example, my example, of something that can be simple about speaking your truth. Someone wanted an example, which is, let's say you're going out with your friend or your person and you have an early meeting, and that's a friend or a person who likes to stay out late, but you really want to be home and in bed by 10. Speaking your truth would be saying that, hey, I will come with you tonight to this opening, whatever the thing is, but I have an early day tomorrow. So I want to make a simple request that we leave so that I can be home by 10. That's it, right? So this is super simple. It is not that hard. And the person then either can say no, or how about take your own car, because I don't want to leave that early. But that is something that is speaking your truth. There can be more important areas where you're speaking your truth. If you have shared money with your partner, right? That can be, sometimes you have to have a conversation. You have to have agreements about how will we spend our collective money, rules of engagement around money. Neither one of us will make a purchase over $50, $80, $200, depending on your income, without conferring with the other one, without having a conversation. Because what ends up happening, a lot of the proactive ways that we can talk true, because right now, every single one of you on this live, watching this after the fact, the things in your relationships that are bothering you, that have bothered you. You know where you feel resentment with friendships, with work relationships. So it isn't like you don't know where you could talk true. It's a matter of finding that your way back to the conversation, or when it happens again, being able to speak truthfully. Someone had said, it's really hard to do at work to talk true, because it's like people are saying that I'm hurting their feelings. So listen, I always take feedback from others. I try to do it with an open mind. Like, okay, if that was that person's experience, then I will look at my behavior within myself. Like I'm willing to always be like, maybe I was, I don't know. So I will look at that. You will also have people who say that you are hurting their feelings as a lever of control, like as a way to manipulate you. So I think we have to know who we're dealing with. If the person is like kind of underhanded or shady or manipulative, then, we take it from where it's coming from, in respect to. And here's the thing, you don't have to be quote unquote radically, right? Someone was talking about at work, radical candor. Like, we don't have to be sort of radically honest, meaning brutally honest, right? But we can still tell the truth. We can always be nice about it if we want to be. We could use a little more heat if we need to. So it really depends on the situation, but it's important. Yeah, exactly. Robin said, I've learned to let them know how I feel so I don't feel upset later on. Exactly. Because if you're not telling the truth, then, and you're annoyed and you're pissed off, or you're not returning their phone calls, you're texting them like 10 days later, they don't know why. So part of talking true is that we want people to know where we stand. All right, question from Karen. My mother would rather I not speak my truth. Oh, well, welcome to many mothers, Karen. Many people. How many people here feel like their mothers, their mother-in-law, their friend, their partner would rather they not speak the truth? Yeah, that's okay. Sometimes, exactly. And people are like, yes, my mother. Yeah, it's lots of people feel the same. But here's the thing. It's your truth and it's your decision. Because if someone is not interested in your truth at all, then you have decisions to make about how close a relationship you really want to have with them, even if it's your mother, right? Especially if there's a personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, could be untreated bipolar. There's a whole bunch of cluster B personality disorders that can, make it very difficult where there's lots of control issues. And if your truth goes against their fake reality, then they're going to punish you for it and be mad. So I think it's also very important. And those of you who have the book know that I do a whole chapter on boundary destroyers in the book, which are basically these can be very difficult personalities because the regular rules of engagement, boundary wise, don't really apply when we're dealing with that type of person, right? We have to be more self-protective. So, and listen, I'm not saying we should go out and diagnose everyone in our life as having a personality disorder, but I am saying you have history, so you know what your history is, you know? So it's really up to where you are in your life and in that relationship that your history tells you. Donna said, I just got your book and started reading it today. Yay. Yes. Boundarybossbook.com. Feel free to get it. Okay. Well, Kenzie's here. And since your camera's on, I guess I'm going to bring you up early because you're here. So come on up. Oh, wait, no, don't come up yet. Don't unmute. I want to talk about you for 1 second. I met Kenzie because I was on her really fun podcast called I Love You So Much. But it's ILYSM because she's Generation Z. Anyway, Kenzie's 23-year-old lifestyle blogger, podcast host of the show I just talked about, currently lives in Dallas with her 2 dogs, Fitz and Coco. She focuses on lifestyle, wellness, style, fitness, and mental health. All right, unmute yourself, would you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm so glad you came. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. If my dogs bark, ignore them. They will calm down in like 2 seconds.
Okay, well, first be quiet. I don't hear them yet. So
Yeah, they're good, I think.
anyway, welcome. I'm so happy that you could make it. When I was on your show, we were talking about so many things that had to do with the really specific struggles of the people in your crew and of your own boundary struggles with friends. And then we talked quite a bit about social media boundaries. So I'm curious if you would share with us your own and others, especially people who have platforms and even people who don't. What do you see as some of the biggest, we could say social media tech, let's say, like how much screen time you're having, those types of struggles? Can you share with me your own and some of your communities?
Yeah, so well, first off, I want to say there have been so many things that I learned from you from that episode that I've implemented and have just changed the game of my life. But I could go with social media boundaries, I think, in 2 different ways. One from having a platform as far as what I share, what I give, and then also just as any normal person who has any sort of screen time or any social media. Starting with that, I try to not just sit around and aimlessly scroll as much as possible. I'm not perfect at that. Obviously, I mess up a lot, but it is something that I have found directly is correlated almost with my mental health if I'm just on my phone. And it's not even necessarily like comparing myself to people or whatever that might be. I think it's just me sitting there and not doing something that actually like refuels me. So I try to not just scroll aimlessly throughout the day, which is difficult because I'm constantly looking for new guests for the show and new things like that that I need to be on my phone for. But I would say my biggest boundary, and this is something that I started in 2020, is I am not on my phone before bed at all. I am a really big reader. I read all the time. So from the second I go to bed, and I go to bed to read. Like I'm really lame sometimes. But I do that every single night and I read on my Kindle and I don't even touch my phone. Like it's face down. I'm not one of those people who sleeps in another room, but I can just turn it face down and I use it for my alarm. And that has made such a big difference.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, when you hear anyone, when they talk about sleep disorders and all of this stuff, how much it has to do with being on your phone, like until the second you close your eyes and then having it be the first thing that you do in the morning. And, when we knew we were going to do this event, we did actually a big survey and had tons and tons of people in this age group answering. And some of the biggest issues that they had were, part of it was compare and despair. So why don't you tell us, because as someone who's an influencer, because you share a lot of things, right, on your stuff. So can you talk about what you share and why you share what you share?
I feel like this has changed so much. I've been on the internet since it was my 16th birthday and I turned 24 this summer. So this has obviously changed a ton. I've shared, I don't want to say relationships, like I've shared people that I was dating, and I think that's probably on like the more open end, but I didn't ever share, like, as I got older, it was never like details of that relationship. And with that being said, I've definitely had boyfriends that have never seen social media. So that's one thing for me. I don't know. Also, just the topic of comparison on social media with boundaries. I think as like a quote unquote influencer, a lot of the time you would think it would be worse because you're comparing to like someone else's success or growth or whatever that is. And I actually think, because I am behind the scenes and I know the game and I know what's really going on in these people's lives, like I know it's not all it's always cracked up to be. So I try not to see what other people are doing and let that make me feel any lesser, because I'm happy and like fulfilled in what I'm doing in my own life. And I personally don't find all of my like quote unquote success from like my career anyways. So yeah, I feel like that answer is all over the place. There's certain things that I try not to. And then as far as comparison, I just like I really just focus on like we all have our own lane.
Yeah. And another thing with it, no, I appreciate that. And I think, trying to keep some things private for yourself, keeping something sacred, sharing other things if you think it will help others. I mean, part of it is, you have people who are sort of watching what it is that you're doing. And I think that what came in the survey was a lot of people, and we've seen this talked about on the internet quite a bit, of comparing their everyday life to someone else's, highlight reel. And as you're saying, like we all know, people are just people, and no matter what they're doing. And yet what the stuff that came in is that it can make people feel bad about themselves when I was watching a special, actually, I think it was on 60 Minutes, like 2 nights ago. And it was someone saying when they go on Kendall, Jenner's, thing, that she feels bad about her body because she doesn't look at all like that. I'm like, hi, who does? But okay. Like most people don't. But what do you say to the younger, how do we stay in our own lane in your estimation?
I think this is hard because I think it's something that I almost gets a little bit easier with age. I talk to a lot of friends, even that just are in their 30s, and they always talk about how if for some reason in their 30s comparison became or to not compare became a lot easier. But I think even like Kendall Jenner doesn't look like Kendall Jenner half the time. Like, this is lighting, these are photos, and that's not to put her down at all. It's just the reality of it. And I think, as cheesy as it is, and I don't know if these are necessarily the most practical steps, but you really do just have to focus on like what makes you happy and what makes you you. I think I've been reading a lot recently, and it was a concept of how it's interesting that as humans we think that we know what's going to make us happy, because if we're saying that hasn't happened yet, then why do we think that we think these things are going to make us happy? Like, we haven't seen into the future. And if I've learned anything, it's just that, like, in my own life, and this can be confidence, comparison, whatever it is, if I think I need to do something because someone else is doing it and I do it, so unfulfilled. But if I just kind of follow like my own intuition or my own like heart almost, it helps me so much. And so with that being said, when you're looking at different people on social media, I think practically, like, if someone's page is making you feel bad about yourself, I don't even think that's necessarily their fault, but I think I would mute them on Instagram. I would change who you're following, even muting at the very least. And I would just focus on that and then focus on things that like make you happy and make you feel confident. I remember when I was like 19, my friend had us write out things that made us feel good about ourselves or fulfilled or content or whatever it was. And we started really focusing in on those things over a few months, and it made the biggest things like that is really helpful. But I do think it's a journey. And I think for me, it's gotten easier as I've gotten older, and I'm only 24. So like, I'm not like very old, but I do think it's gotten easier though, just seeing more life.
I love that. And a lot of people are saying, yes, that's helpful. Like, the stuff that makes you happy. Some of the responses we got in the survey is that people were scrolling without being able to stop, like kind of just falling into that vortex. So you guys who are here live, and if you're watching this after, do you have this experience of sort of either scrolling as a procrastination tactic to avoid doing something that you should be doing, scrolling really without being able to stop? That's another one. Or doom scrolling, where you're like following some shit that is so negative, that is so depressing, that is so like nobody needs to read another article on it because you already got all the pertinent facts. Like, we don't need to. I mean, I'm assuming that's what doom scrolling is, but I'm old. So is that what doom scrolling is?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure.
I don't know. Yes. Yeah, that's people are saying, yes, having that experience, avoid my current feelings. Because here's the thing, quickly, we can just hit the fact that something biological is actually happening. So this isn't like, what's wrong with us? Why are we doing this? This hits the same exact part of the brain that the pleasure center. So when people like what we put out there, when we have a positive interaction, when we post things, if something goes viral, that is the same part of the brain that is addicted, right? We're just getting a hit on that part, like, yes, yes, yes. And yet it's the same thing. You need more and more and more to sort of get that same feeling. So I do think that what you were saying about looking to get that fulfillment, finding the balance to the best of your ability, but also seeking to embrace your own uniqueness, right? Like, what makes you, you. It's not looking like Kendall Jenner, right? It's not doing that. And if you do want to have a public platform, you can, but do it as you. And this kind of brings us back to the whole thing about, you had said following your heart, like being dialed into like what makes you feel good. Follow those accounts. I also am a big believer, and with all of my clients who have businesses and need to be online, that limiting their time, limiting screen time. I mean, it's so important that it's not the first thing you do in the morning. I say, I don't do anything until about 11, where I've already worked out, meditated, hung out with my husband, been outside, fed the chickens and the geese, watered my plants, fed the birds. There's a whole thing when you live on Crackpot Farm. But I even did
dream.
that.
Literally.
One day, Kens, one day, you too can live with chickens and geese. But there's something, my life changed when I got really clear about how having no boundaries with social media. I always had boundaries with like television and those types of things, meaning I didn't have the TV in the bedroom ever, not ever. I mean, we moved to this house, we didn't have a television for 8 months. Like, it isn't that so much, but as social media, especially if it impacts your business. Now, I claim if it wasn't my business, I wouldn't be on it as much, but I don't know if that's true. I just feel like it's a good thing to say, but I do limit the time frame. And I definitely think that creating some kind of a morning routine that's really anchored in real life, in your real life, this moment, walking your dogs, going outside, I'm jumping on my trampoline, I'm doing something, because we have to differentiate. Even though virtual life, especially in pandemic, has become a lot of real life, right? That has actually happened, but it's still not our physical life, which is so incredibly important. And I want to ask you before you go, I want to ask you about the podcast itself. What inspired you to, I mean, you're a young person to have a podcast. What inspired you, and what kind of guests besides me? Because I know I was on there, but is it all like that? Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to do it and what kind of guests you have.
Yes, well, you were one of the like favorite episodes, so we will have to do that again. I started my podcast about 2.5 years ago. I started listening to Girl Boss Podcast season 1 back when it was Sophia. And that was really one of the first podcasts that I had ever listened to. And I feel like that was really hitting that like the Gen Z younger millennials. And at that point, none of my friends were really listening to it. And it still felt like they weren't popular yet. And I really wanted to start one. I didn't for about 2 years because I had someone on my team who just wasn't the most encouraging. And I finally was like, I'm going to do this. I don't know. It's something that I'd always wanted, not necessarily a podcast, but to have some sort of show. And it really is the perfect avenue. So yeah, we have authors on, we have a lot of entrepreneurs. Tomorrow it's Emily DiDonato. She's a supermodel. A lot of business leaders, thought leaders. I even have a lot of my like friends, my siblings, people on. It's really all over the place. It's super lifestyle, which is basically just code word for like whatever I'm feeling at that time. I'm really into like neuroscience and stuff right now. So like I'm having like Dr. Caroline Leaf on and things like that. So it really just depends on the week, honestly.
I love it though, because it's sort of like your curiosity is driving what it is that you're doing, and your real life too. So people are saying they loved our episode together. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Well, I loved having you on here, and I just want to say thank you for spending time with us tonight. Thank you for what you do. Keep doing your podcast, keep informing us. And yes, we will do another podcast together.
Wow. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
Where can people find you, babe, before you go?
Oh, Kinsey Elizabeth on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that stuff.
Oh, TikTok. I got to go on there and check you out.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, honey, for being with us.
Bye. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So that was great. I wanted to talk a little more because there was a bunch of other things and some questions that have come in about social media stuff. So I wanted to see where you guys are at with this. People scrolling out of habit. Do you identify with that? Not sticking to a time limit. Many of you said in the survey that you have that time limit app thing on your phone, but you don't use it. So does that resonate with you? Feeling guilty if you don't respond right away to comments and texts when people are like DMing you and trying to get in touch with you. That's especially if you do have a brand, I'd say a public platform, but even even if you're just regular person in real life, right? Yep. Spending a lot of time, losing track of time, feeling guilty, not responding on time. Yep. Katika, I hear you. Linda said the time limit helps me feel calmer. That's great. Cami said sometimes yes, but I put my phone on do not disturb. Me too. Yes, that time limit is only a suggestion. Yeah, Jacqueline, exactly. You're like, they meant I could have another 10 minutes. Karen said, I used to have the app limit turned on, then turned it off because I always went over, right? You're like, whatever, I'm just giving in. I did the Cloud and Townsend Boundaries book and class that I said the last meeting was the needed scripts. A week later, I heard you were being interviewed on YouTube and said your book has scripts. And I got your book right away. Can't wait to get into it, says Donna. Well, I have a whole chapter in Boundary Boss of scripts, so you will know it. Cami said, LOL, I'm scared to use the time limit app. Yeah, I think we kind of are. It's like a whoopee. It's kind of like become our blankie where we don't want to give it up, Carol said, yep, I'm way too tied to my phone. I follow so many groups and it takes so long to look at everything. I need to stop doing that. Oh, Carol, you and me both. I always encourage friends to call if it's urgent over messaging. And Angelica said, this was amazing, Terri. Thank you so much. Looking forward to reading your book. Yay. Well, great. We're not done. We have another 45 minutes. Don't go. Lots of people are identifying though with this. Lori said, I love your book. I bought the audiobook version. Oh, thanks, Lori. I love that you guys bought my book. I really do appreciate it. Part of the thing with what we're talking about with social media, though, is that a lot of it is to mood alter, right? To escape, to self-soothe to a degree. And yet what I think we will find, especially if you're doom scrolling, please don't be doing that, is that it's really not soothing. Like what I find is that it's friggin' exhausting. Yes, exactly. Crystal said it's a distraction. I don't mind being slightly distracted. And what's interesting, I rarely ever fall into a hole, maybe because I was writing a book and promoting it and super, super busy. But for the first time ever, I went on Reels. Never did that. This was literally 1 week ago. And an hour went by and I was like, P.S. never going on that again. Like I'm absolutely never going on that again. You could just watch people dancing side by side. Like I didn't even know what the thing was. I still don't. But oh my God, it just the next and the next and the next, and there's no ever stopping it, you know? All right. Heather said totally, especially, it's FOMO. Donna said, yes. How much of it is fear of missing out? Yeah, there is quite a lot of that. Totally, especially for those with brain injury, long haul symptoms for many. Yeah, it's exhausting, you know? All right, moving on. Yes, it is exhausting as a distraction. There's other distractions that I think are less draining physically, you know? Yes, we need the whole thing of fear of missing out is that we've got to be more dialed into our own lives. And I think that that is very common. It's not just you if you're feeling that way. And I remember years ago when I first started this kind of this public platform type of a thing, I would be looking at what other people were doing and I would feel I needed to go to all of the, my friends invited me to their book launches and all the things. And I spent like years doing all of those things, partly fear of missing out, partly knowing that it would one day be me and that, not to be strategic, but, being supportive, and you hope that eventually you can count on the support of your friends to do the same. There is something though, what you're saying, Heather, that is so true. It's like, there's something about the worthiness factor of sort of what comes up. If we have FOMO, or if someone is doing something that we wish we were doing, let's say in our business or whatever it is, or even if it's about love and marriage or a partnership, it can really tap into a sense of being unworthy. And so that is something that is really painful, and we really can't compare ourselves with other people, Yeah, it's like this whole thought of looking at what are we posting for? It's like even with a platform and a business platform, I'm always thinking, will this add value? Is this a vanity post? Right? Like, do I just want to post this picture because I think I look good in this picture? But really, it's not going to maybe add value to anybody else's life. And listen, there's nothing wrong with doing that, once every 400 posts, but it's something about, because of the kind of platform I have, right, which is actually a mental health empowerment platform, that as long as I keep my eye on the prize of what am I doing it for? Because if my heart is in the right place and what I'm posting because it's how I actually feel, or because I'm really hoping that it will help you, then it really doesn't matter. Of course, I want to get it to as many people as possible, but it's not the same thing. It feels very personal. With stuff that feels more like a vanity post, then it feels like personally personal rather than business personal. So Cameron said it really does. I ended up unfriending people on social media because of seeing how happy they were and when I should be happy for them. I mean, yes, and sometimes we do question what people put out there, depending on what the motivation is. If it's regular people just sharing happy pictures of like their family and kids, but you feel like it's too much and it makes you feel bad about yourself, that is, what Kenzie said is a good idea. Then maybe we put those folks on mute and don't judge ourselves for how we're feeling. Because, listen, we've all been through hell and back, right? This last year and whatever, it's year and 3 months, whatever, it's been a lot, right? Lindsay said company with lockdown. I mean, there is something that's so beautiful that came out of us being able to all be on Zoom. Even doing this, we can be together, even though we're not in the same place. So it expanded our minds, and we did need company. And a lot of us couldn't see our parents because they're older, and all of the things that being connected socially, and even social media with like Facebook, right, which is kind of an older person's thing to a degree, but like staying in touch with cousins and other family members that I wouldn't normally do it, but during a global pandemic, I certainly found myself checking in on people more than I would normally, and it was easier to do it that way. So there was something very comforting about that. Heather is saying, yes, feeling unworthy goes back to our family of origin for a lot of us. Yes. In business, asking ourselves, totally, is this leading to flow for me, feeling great, etc. Exactly. And also knowing, because we can also get curious about what are the things that we see that don't produce flow, that make us feel bad. You know what I mean? Hold on. I feel like our time frame, are we good? Yeah. Okay. All right, there we go. Because I know the other ladies are on waiting for Jamila. Okay. In the meantime, doesn't that mean we have a boundary issue that we can work on if other posts bother us? Kat, yes. That's what I was going to say. Getting curious before I got distracted by the time thing. Getting curious about why that's bothering us. But I got to say, I think the compare and despair, depending on where we are in life, it's a very common pitfall that we can fall into, especially if we are longing for something in our own life, whether it's to write a book or whether it's to fall in love or whatever. And we seem to see it everywhere else. There's a moment of envy or jealousy, but it's about, do we stay in that place or do we move ourselves to a better place? Because there is a whole boundary aspect to all of this. And what I found so fascinating about those of you who went through and were kind enough to fill out the survey, is that we basically took every single one of those categories and really were able to look and say, okay, so what is it that you're struggling with when it comes to your family of origin? What is it that you're struggling with when it comes to working, when it comes to your friends? And there were so many similarities that I just realized, like, you guys need something for yourselves, right? Something that actually speaks to where you are in your life, which is what inspired me to create this virtual event for you. And stay to the end, because I have a super duper surprise, because I created something else for you that has to do with exactly the things that you need. Okay, I've spent many years feeling not having boundaries. It's not just a young person's dilemma. Oh no, it's absolutely not. Oh no. And here's the thing, Theo, everything that we're teaching is also applicable to any disordered boundaries. I'm hoping that in inspiring and empowering this next generation, that they will be the last generation. Like, we will end that cycle of feeling disempowered because of not having boundaries. So, I feel you, trust me. Okay, Maka said, is there any clear code of conduct we can implement when we experience FOMO, which can actually help us feel more connected? Journaling, going into nature, being proactive would help. Yeah, I mean, not staying there, right, is one thing, like not continuing to torture yourself. But yes, I think, listen, it is always important to dial in. So journaling is a perfect way of being like, hey, how do I feel? Right? What is going on? Because what I always say to my clients when we would deal with this is that look at someone else having something that you want as amazing, because instead of why not me, it can literally be me next. It is proof, evidence that people are still falling in love, or that books are still being written, or that whatever, which I really love that idea. So I feel like there's plenty that we can do, and being proactive is actually a big deal. So we're going to pull up Jamila. Hold on. I'm going to talk about you a little bit right now before you come up. So it is Jamila Bushell, who her Instagram handle, and how I know her is that I featured one of her amazing quotes, as one of my Monday Motivation Spotlight features. And her handle is Sister is Fine. That's like her big community handle. And she also has her one that's Jamila. So Jamila started Sister is Fine because she realized after her divorce that she was no different from other women. What struck her the most was the lack of knowledge about financial health. An even bigger issue was the lack of support women felt that they had when they needed it the most, just this lack of support. So she's now happily remarried with 4 kids. Jamila wanted to make an impact on her community and ensure that she made a difference in how women and young girls view themselves in all aspects of their life. So Sister is Fine. It's really like a community gathering. So she creates mixers for women to kind of mingle and vent if they need to vent. And she also does workshops to strengthen financial and physical wealth and health. Part of the whole thing with boundaries and finances is we have to look at, where did we learn it? Look who it is. You did it. Hold on. Unmute, baby. Ask to unmute.
Okay, there we go.
I understand, sister. Trust me when I tell you that I am the tech myself, dinosaur. Not saying you are, but I am. So it's the most stressful part of anything I have to do.
My phone and 2 laptops. And none of them gave me the option for video. They were all giving me audio options only.
Well, you look
I'm
fantastic
so sorry. This chat.
right now. You're here. I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit we're talking about your story, about your own journey, this whole financial journey, and what you're inspired, how you help and want to help women now. Tell us your journey a little bit.
So my journey started when I was newly divorced, moved into an apartment, and had no idea what I was going through, what I was going to do. And I had 2 small children at the time from my ex. And all I had were my girlfriends, my very best friends from high school. And we would chat, and then we would compare stories, and what she was saying, I was saying, and vice versa. We're all going through the same things. Why are we not talking about this more? Why isn't it more prevalent in the community? And having that support. So I decided to start Sister is Fine really as just an Instagram page to get the motivation out there. And I really had to dig deep within myself and realize, A, I had played a role in what went wrong in my relationship. B, there were a lot of signs that relationship was not good for me that I ignored. And a lot of that had to do with boundaries that I had no idea I needed to set. And I had no clue what a boundary was. So those standards that needed to be set and really held firm, I really wanted to push those ideas out there into the internet and see who else could relate. And it's just been going from there. And especially with the financial aspect, having that information can really help a lot of women that are in positions that they wouldn't otherwise be in if they had the knowledge of when they can buy a house, when they can save money, how they can invest. So those are things that I'm trying to get accomplished. Amazing. While I'm here.
Well, we so need it. So some of the stuff because we did a big survey, so we would have like, what are people's pain points literally right now? So one question that came in was, how can I charge what I'm worth?
Tough. That's a tough one, because we want to provide a service, or we want to be helpful, but we also need to stand firm in what we are worth. And I think that's the key to everything, is to know that you hold something of value. I work with a client who is very adamant about charging what she charges brides when they are getting married, and she does not budge. And you know what happens? Either they pay or they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that
Right.
simple. The people who are willing to invest will invest.
Right. But it takes a certain amount of confidence. And I find that people have this fear. And I know when I was in my 20s, there's a fear. When I was starting out as a therapist,
Mhm.
it's like I didn't want, there's all of these limiting beliefs, right? That if I charge what I'm worth, what I think I'm worth, and not feeling like I had an over amplified idea of what my skill set was, right? I was a new therapist, so I wasn't charging $1 zillion, but like people will think I'm greedy. It was uncomfortable to even bring up the cost of therapy when I was a young therapist, where I was like, well, it's not about that. You're like, and then I had a therapist who was mentoring me, and she basically said, you realize that if you have unhealthy boundaries around money with your clients, that's bad for your clients. And that completely cured me. She was like, you get it, that they're now unclear. The same way, like with kids, we need like boundaries, right? With your
Yes.
children, they need to know this is what we're doing. This is okay. This is not okay. Or they're very insecure and anxious. And I think that that can be the same thing. What about for you feeling worthy of abundance? Like once you got out of that marriage and sort of got on your own healing path, was there some kind of a shift? Like, was it talking to other people? What shifted for you in feeling like you were worthy to do what you're doing right now?
One of the things that really stands out to me still is I am a strong believer in karma. I believe that what I give out, I will get. And that works for the good ways and the bad ways, right? So, for instance, I was driving to work one morning very late, per usual. This was when I was still single and handling the children by myself. And I was in a rush and I had a bit of road rage and I yelled at a driver. Well, he didn't see me yell at him, but curse you. And I speed around him. When I get to work, I have a nail in my tire. And those are the type of things that I'm like, okay, maybe it's because I was angry at that guy. And in the same aspect, Terri, I won't even lie to a person because I believe in karma that much. And the life has been good to me because I don't lie to people. I don't manipulate them. I move with good intention or I don't move at all. And I think that those things really allow me to attract a lot of good things. And I don't have $1 million and I don't have, a billion fans on Instagram, but I have a lot of love and I'm surrounded by a lot of good people. And I have people tell me all the time that I have a good energy. And for me, that makes me rich. So I think that we have to really move with those good intentions and think about what it is that we want to manifest, right? Manifestation and goals, very big on that and boundaries.
Yep. Amazing being big on boundaries and that, but like attracts like, and I love this whole notion of there's a faith element to what you're talking about.
Yes.
Right. Being divinely guided, being divinely protected in some way, and believing that if your heart is in the right place, if you can say for sure, I'm doing my best, and this is my true intention. I'm not hiding my intention. I don't have a sketchy intention, that good things are attracted. And I think that that is such good advice to get really clear, but that really requires good internal boundaries with yourself.
Yes. Every single day. Every day I have to be honest with myself. So I am remarried and we've been married it'll be 2 years in October. And so we're still new to this. And there are things that I'm not liking. There's things that he puts up with and, he lets it roll off his shoulders. But one thing that I have to do is I have to be honest with myself. Am I being really a good person. I will go out and smile to the world, and I will give them my absolute best. Am I giving it to my husband? Or am I just, brushing them off? And I don't want to watch TV right now. And I just want to be left alone. So even there, I have to make sure that I'm being honest with myself and with everyone around me. Even my mom. I love my mom to death, just, like most of us. But there are days where I'm just like, I can't with my mother today. And I have to be honest, and it's nothing that nobody else has done to me. It's just something that I'm working on in myself in that moment. And then we wake up the next day and we move forward. So I think that just having those intentions, and super intentional about the way that I think about myself and the way I think about my family and my lifestyle, just being very self-aware will get you a long way. Whether it's, these are the good qualities that I have. And so if these people can't accept that, then I have to get rid of them. Or these are the bad things that maybe I need to work on within myself. I'll be the first to admit, I used to be super toxic without even knowing, the trend of saying toxic. I was not a good person. But once I realized those things about myself, there's still pieces of me, but those are the pieces that I have to not, compress, but I have to work on those things.
Right.
And I think that's something that everyone needs to work on.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end it. And that is so inspiring, because the reality is that you changed your life. You took a hard look at where you were, what you were doing, and now you're inspiring thousands of women all over the interweb to do the same thing and to come together and do it. So people can find you on Insta at Sister Is Fine, and that's Jamila. And is there a website that we can send people to as well?
sisterisfine.org. And it's very important that you go to .org. Leave it at that. But make sure that it's sisterisfine.org, and also on Twitter. I just started off on Twitter, so Sister Is Fine as well.
Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you, the work that you're doing. Keep doing it, and we will do this again for sure.
We will be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jamila. All right, you guys. So wow, she's great. It's so fun. I'm meeting all these people. The next person who's up, I'm also meeting. This is like, you're literally seeing me, like my girl crushes all coming to life right in front of your eyes, right here, live in real time. So that was great. I hope that was helpful to you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our next guest, Ginger Dean. And on Insta, you may know her. That's how I know her. Loving Me After We. And someone on my team actually turned me on to Ginger's work. And I was like, oh my God, I love it. And then we featured her as a Monday social post. So Ginger's a relationship coach and the founder of Loving Me After We. Her specialty is helping women overcome heartbreak, increase self-love and confidence after a toxic relationship so they can become the best version of themselves. So hello, unmute yourself. Are you here?
Hi, Terry. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
I sure can. I'm so happy you're here. Look, people are saying her work helped me so much. I love it. Great. Yes, Ginger. Thankful. Okay. Yay.
I just wanted to add, I am also a psychotherapist as well.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
That's so interesting, because I had you as a dating coach. I thought you were when I originally reached. She's a psychotherapist as well. I love it. So let's talk, shall we?
Yes.
Biggest dating issues that you see happening sort of right now that people come to you with.
I would say right now, people tend to entertain red flags as pink, as white, as yellow flags, right? And instead of thinking about, well, what are my values? What are my boundaries? What are my standards? They tend to entertain a lot of red flags over and over again, hoping that, who they are will be able to convince this person to shift or to change. Okay. And that gets exhausting, and the relationship ends in flames. And then it's like, okay, so what happened? And so when we look back at what happened, we see that, well, there were these little red flags that you kind of looked at. You kind of thought they were purple, pink, yellow, but not red. And red means, full stop.
Right. So can you give us some examples of red flags that we should not pretend are pink or white?
I would say that one is overlapping relationships. That's a big one. So I have a Facebook group, and one of the things that comes up is, they meet someone that's fresh out of a relationship, or they're still dealing with the ex, for example. And that's a boundary issue, right? Especially when you have someone who has a harem of exes that they're still dealing with. And they casually tell you, but you kind of think to yourself, well, after they get to know me, they won't want to date this person anymore. But you've actually just told them that I don't really have great boundaries around this. So I'll continue to see you, even if I know that you're still dating other people, or even if they don't tell you outright, you may kind of get the impression that they're not over the ex. It's an overlapping situation. They're back and forth between the two of you. So that's one of the main ones that I tend to see a lot.
And what about communication? What do you see as a red flag when it comes to the way, if you're just starting with someone, how they're communicating with you?
I would say one of the biggest ones I see is silent treatment that then follows with like a nasty outburst, right? Where they start to curse you out, they call you names. And if you have as a standard that you want someone who's respectable, and a boundary is that I don't want someone who's yelling at me when they're disappointed with me or angry, then in terms of communication, how that person handles disappointment, I think, is super important as well. And so we may say things like, well, everyone's human, everyone makes mistakes. And yeah, that is true. But I think when you have routine situations, or just situations where the first blow up is I'm calling you derogatory names, that's problematic, because you're also showing that person that it's okay for you to do this. And if you're doing it with them, you'll do it moving forward with other people as well.
You want to talk about like a huge red flag? So let's look at the smaller ones. When we're first interacting, like people, because pandemic life, people were like Zoom dating, right? I mean, this is what was going on. But I was still hearing from my clients about communication stuff with someone saying they're going to call you, not calling you. Someone saying we're going to have a Zoom date, not showing up, not canceling. So what do you say about consistent and inconsistent communication in that way?
So one of the things is paying attention to whether or not someone is able to follow through, right? I think that can be called breadcrumbing as well, saying they're going to follow through, saying they're going to do something. Hey, we should see each other tonight, this evening, and never following up, never showing up, right? And I think when we are able to honor our own boundaries around consistency, around what we want to see in a potential partner, then we won't find ourselves in these situations. So that does tend to happen, but you also have to start paying attention to when this happened. How many times are you willing to give someone a chance after they've done this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, right?
Right.
And as you're giving this person more and more chances, your attachment system starts to activate, right? And then you're like, oh my God, they don't like me, what's going on? And then you start to obsessively ruminate about what potentially is happening. And you're not paying attention to the fact that, well, this person perhaps isn't a good fit because they're not following through, they're not consistent, so maybe I need to kind of walk away from this.
Yeah. So it also kicks up a lot of times it'll kick up the abandonment fear that it sort of doesn't even matter. I can find sometimes with my clients where they're so focused on not being rejected that they forget to vet the people themselves. Have you seen this as well?
Yeah, because your ego doesn't really want to deal with the idea that this person isn't interested, doesn't really want me. For example, we were talking about this topic today on Instagram, and a lot of comments were saying, you know what, I have to realize that sometimes I get reactive because I don't want to accept that this person isn't interested, because maybe I'm equating their lack of interest with my self-worth. And so that's a huge hit to our ego. And sometimes we just don't really want to accept that. But that person, sometimes we have to really consider that we're not a match for that person because we're potentially on a healing journey, which doesn't make us a match for that person anymore. right? And we're trying to jump back into old habits where we're trying to force someone to like us, to love us, to accept us, when they're truly not a good fit, and it has nothing to do with your self-worth or your value as a person.
Yeah, it kicks it up. And I think that the self-awareness piece that you're talking about, that, you know, if it's 5 times, 6 times, 7 times that someone is making a promise that they're not keeping, that if you can step back long enough, because again, this is disordered boundaries, of course, and has to do with your relationship with yourself. Because so much of the time in the beginning of a relationship, it's not about the other person, because we don't even freaking know them hardly, right? Like, it's our projection of who they might be, of who we hope they are. And so I think that there's something really powerful about what you were saying about pay attention
Yeah.
to what's actually happening,
Yeah.
rather than what did I do, or get right.
Yeah. And sometimes, you know, it has to do with some of our childhood trauma as well, right? So, for
Mhm.
example, if we had a father who was intermittently around, right? And we, you know, repetitive compulsion, we will continue to repeat the past until we become conscious to the pattern today. So if we had an intermittent father that was around, and then now we're dating and we have someone who's breadcrumbing in 1 minute, out the next, that's the same pattern. And so what I like to ask people is, you know, when did this feeling first land for you around someone who's just really inconsistent? And they'll start to realize that they've had a pattern of dating people who are inconsistent for them, because that tends to be a significant feeling or experience that their brain hasn't been able to resolve. So in trying to master it, they keep dating people who do the same thing. And so it's a red flag, but then also look at whether or not this is a consistent pattern in your life as well.
Yep. Now I love that, because here's the thing: there's always going to be the pattern. If we look for it,
Mm-hmm.
we will see the patterns, right? So much of the time we're so in it, like in the drama of a relationship, especially a relationship that's dramatic, the
Mm-hmm.
ups and the downs and the fighting. But everyone who's interested in the work that we're doing here, everyone is interested in Boundary Boss book, everyone is interested in, you know, psychotherapists online who are doing what we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
knows that there's more to what is happening
Yeah,
than meets the eye. So I like to always say, like, hey, there's always a parallel process
there is.
going on,
Yes.
right? And if you start to learn, like you said, to see what are the repetitions,
Mm-hmm.
what am I repeating? Oh, this is familiar because my father was unreliable, or my father was emotionally unavailable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so then who would I be pursuing to prove that I was worthy?
Yeah.
Unavailable people. And when I thought I mastered that, then I was pursuing people who lived on other continents,
Yes.
which was literally the same thing.
Well, a lot of long distance relationships, right? Because you're like, oh, they're away, they're over there, right? But that brings up the same abandonment wounds. It brings up the same potential for rejection. And so, you know, we kind of have to really start to pay attention to that. But our egos will say, well, no, that's not really what it is. And maybe it's this. Maybe I just have to find someone else who's my soulmate and a great fit. And it's like, you're going to keep doing it until you start to make conscious decisions around this.
Yep. That's actually that's such a powerful, you're going to keep doing this until you can make conscious decisions around this. And that means allowing yourself to see the red flags, because I know in my own young life, you know, I get out of a disastrous relationship and then I'd be like, but you did kind of know when you had that weekend at the beach and that thing happened. Like, I could suddenly see, like, the flags I said were pink, that of course when it was over, you were like, they were crimson. Why did you think they were pink? You know, because we don't want, you know, we don't want it to end, fear of abandonment, all of those things. But that's really helpful because it's empowering, you know, Ginger, it's empowering for you to say, you're going to keep repeating that until you become aware of what it is that you're repeating, because then you, the people, we are in the driver's seat, as opposed to feeling so victimized, you know?
Yeah, and I think that when we think about not repeating a pattern anymore, we're like, well, what do? We have to learn an entire new, just a whole new skill set in terms of relating to others, and it can feel different. People will, you know, clients will tell me, well, this person's boring. They're not. They're just kind of there, and I'm like, well, when you're used to volatility and the chaos and unpredictability of someone who's emotionally unavailable, stable and secure will feel boring to you, right? And so your ego is going to say, well, this isn't it. This person's boring. And you'll go back to the old pattern, when really that's what safe is. It's stable, it's steady, right? But with the, it's all over the place. Like, did they call? Are they not going to call? They took 2 hours to respond this time, but they took 15 minutes to respond yesterday. Do they still like me? Are they talking to someone else? Right? You have all these little ego stories that pop up. And when we date someone who's secure and stable, it's stable. They're not giving you, you're not preoccupied with what they're doing, and you're able to see red flags for what they are, as opposed to creating a story around, well, maybe they didn't mean to.
Right. It's so true. It's such good advice. All right, you guys. So we can find you at Loving Me After We. And what is your website?
www.lovingmeafterwe.com.
Excellent. So on social, and your website is the same stuff. I want to say thank you so much, Ginger. I loved you being here. I loved your advice. Super appreciate it. More to come.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I was super into the dating advice. Stuff was great. There's so many of you wrote in and told us that you were having problems with this. So our final guests of the evening. Hold on, I got to read your bios. Wait a second, you. Okay. Hi, ladies. It's Mercedes and Jade. I know them from the Magic Hour podcast, and that's magic with a J, just so you know, if you don't know, and maybe you already do. Okay, so what I found fascinating, your bios are both so long. I wish they were shorter. Hold on, but you both have you have these careers doing lots of stuff, right? So MMA, that's where a lot of people know you from, is where you spent 12 years as ring girls in the MMA. So that's mixed martial arts, something, right?
Yep.
Then, and I didn't know you from that at all, but then I got turned on to your podcast, and I was like, wow, what I found so fascinating about both of you is that people love to judge and be like, oh my God, look at them in their bikinis. What is going on? And then we had the deepest interview on your podcast about you are both so knowledgeable, so gorgeous, so amazing, that I was like, wow, this is so great. And you are helping so many people with what it is that you're putting out there. So let's talk about what your people are feeling and experiencing. Jade and Mercedes, welcome to our little live event.
Thank you.
We're excited to be part of this boundary revolution that you are setting in place for us. So thank you.
You are welcome. So what do you guys see as some of the biggest boundary issues, let's say, that your audience talks about?
Ooh, it's interesting. We just actually got done podcasting today with someone where we were talking specifically, boundaries came up. I was like, Terry's going to love hearing about this later. And a lot of the work that we do coming from that MMA background and that sexy bikini modeling background, of course, our audience is largely men. So we work directly with men a lot. We actually have a workshop that we do specifically for men, helping them to do their shadow work and uncover how they can be better in relationship and that type of thing. And so in working with men and having, of course, our own relationships with men in our lives, especially our romantic lives, this idea of how to set a boundary or communicate a boundary comes up a lot. Mm-hmm. And as a woman, and we talk about, masculinity and femininity and being energetically agile between these sexual polarities and using that in relationship. And we talked about that, I think, a little bit with you when you were on the show, but that all comes with these certain stigmas of like, we have to be in the masculine or the feminine, depending on what our gender is and that type of thing. So when you get into a romantic relationship and then you're like, I need to have some firm, structure here. I need to have some boundaries. I need to set my guidelines in this relationship. It can be very masculine, and it is, and that's necessary. And, as feminine bodied people, it's important to know that we need to have that ability to step into our masculine and lay down the law when we need to. Mm-hmm. So when we're speaking with men about it, it becomes, is this going to be a fight, alpha against alpha? And we're going to both be like, trying to, lay down the law and nobody's when, it becomes a war instead of a thing of connection, which is what we want in relationship, is connection, right?
Right.
So today what came up was, how can we use different words to deliver a boundary request, or, tell someone what our needs are when it comes to laying down a boundary, so that they can receive it. And especially when you're talking to a man, I think that's important as well, because if you use too much rigid, wording, they might flex back on you, and then you're not getting where you want to go. And so a word that we came across today that felt really good was even just using structure, and like, how can we set in place a structure here in this part of our relationship that would really allow us to do better together, to connect better together. And so just rewording it as simple as that is, and there's a lot of other ways to do that, but can suddenly make it from being a boundary war,
Right.
to being something that's actually almost inviting and a positive thing.
Yeah, like a collaboration. What were you going to say, Jade?
Well, I think that was like really good for me to hear, because I grew up in a house where I watched my mother have zero boundaries. My birth dad would abuse her, and then they would make love. And so to me, there was like zero boundaries with her body, with her emotions, with anything. He just could do basically whatever he wanted. And then, it continued on through my life. Then even when I was adopted into a religious family, I wasn't allowed to have boundaries then, because I would be going against my authority. They basically made all the rules, and I couldn't think for myself even. So, then in my 20s, dating only boundary destroyers, narcissists that thrived on, my feeling of not being able to set boundaries. And anytime I tried, I would be punished. And so I've now, in my 30s, now that I've done inner work, come into, really working on standing in my power and being able to set those boundaries. But I've noticed that, like the parent that goes from 0 to 100 with yelling, because they know if they just say it, they're not going to be listened to. I've seen that because I've worked so hard to become who I am and to be able to set boundaries, period. I go straight to the rigid boundary, and it sounds like an ultimatum, and it almost ruins the intimacy, because it's very hard, and it's like, you're going to respect me and you're going to respect my boundaries, instead of what, our guest and Mercedes was talking about being able to come at it and just believe that the boundary is going to be respected. Like if you were to tell your kid, and I'm a mother, so I know this isn't the case, but you tell your kid and you just know that they're going to listen, you wouldn't be yelling. So to be able to come at it like that has actually been a boundary that I'm setting with myself, is, to just be able to speak my truth and not have to war to feel heard. And I think another boundary that I've seen in the spiritual community, as well as with myself, is setting a boundary with myself that I can trust my own inner authority instead of giving it away to others in the spiritual community, because I think that they're more enlightened than me. And I think, well, they've done the work, and they're so enlightened. And so I take their truth on as my own. And in that, I end up transgressing myself. And especially being in Austin, that's full of conspiracy theorists, which I love Austin, but it's full of conspiracy theorists. There are so many people with so many different, very different, intense truths. And I've had to set the boundary with myself that I'm not taking on someone else's truth, and that my own inner authority, I can decide what's true for me. And that truth can still be their truth. Like I don't have to take theirs on, and I don't have to convince them of mine either.
Which is such a relief. And there's something about, it's like clarity about whose side of the street is what, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, my truth is my side of the street.
Mm-hmm.
And what you were saying about not needing to convince is that when you continue to build these boundary skills and this language where it starts to really flow with ease and grace, there's so much less fear about doing it, because you don't feel victimized to it, because you do have the power to step back. You do have the power to say, I will attach a consequence if I need to, but this is my first time boundary request. It is not necessary right now.
Mhm.
So I think that there is something really powerful about this age and stage of transformation that really you're both in. And it's so interesting because your show is such a catalyst for your own growth and then for the growth of your community, because of course you're having guests on who are doing stuff that you find interesting and fascinating. And the thing with boundaries is that no matter who else you have on as a guest, no matter what they're talking about, you can always find a boundary aspect
Mm.
of like it being disordered in some way, whether it's a boundary, like you're saying, with someone else's truth, where you're like, that is a limit, right? We talk about our preferences, desires, limits, and deal breakers.
Mhm.
That's a limit. I don't need to convince, and I don't need to take it on, and I don't need to convince them that whatever they're thinking about, whatever they're thinking is not true. I also don't need to have it in my life
Mhm.
because that's a choice as well. So I think that that is really incredibly powerful. We were talking with some of the other guests about, Lindsay actually was on from Almost 30, just talking about the transition boundary wise from being single into being partnered. And for you, for both of you, like where is that in your life right now?
Ooh, I think so much for me has been on my own journey is about absolving shame around where I hadn't had boundaries or where I wasn't good at practicing them, and getting into relationship. We say, I mean, maybe this is a common saying, but we definitely say it a lot on the show, that you can't heal, like you have to heal relational trauma in relationship. So, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a romantic relationship. And it of course doesn't have to be the origin relationship where the trauma happened, but you will likely have to do at least part of that healing in relationship. And so being really getting down to the core of where shame resides in you has been, in me, has been a critical part of my particular journey, especially going into relationship, because otherwise I bring all that shame in and then I basically project it onto my partner and it becomes a real problem. I'm not able to even see clearly through the lens of shame where I need a boundary and how it needs to be set, because I'm just being triggered constantly within it. And the thing that's helped me most with that is really this kind of mantra I have now, which came from an intuitive that Jade and I see, that is, shame is always a lie. And, guilt's a different thing. Guilt would mean that you did something bad, which means you have, some guilt about that. And you can therefore go and figure out how to correct that and change that, whatever. But shame is always a lie, which shame would mean you are bad. Like somehow you are innately bad. And that's just not true, no matter what. So when you feel shame, or when I feel shame in my own body, and that takes like slowing down in order to feel for it. When I feel that come up in me, though, that's the place where I go, oh, okay, I need to look here and figure out where the lie is and rewrite the old story. And then when I can do that, I go, oh, okay, what I actually need here is, and once I can figure out what I actually need there from the new story, I can set a boundary with that in mind, like really clearly. And now I've done the work,
Yes, I love that. Someone saying shame is always a lie. Great mantra.
Yeah, it's worked well for me.
No, it's true. And it's very releasing because we get stuck in these patterns and stuck in that belief and all the secrecy. So another thing that's so important about what you're saying is honoring it, talking about it, talk with Jade, talk with a friend, talk with a therapist, write about it. Like, what do I need to do to heal this place, this space? Jade, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think you said specifically with single to partnership. So I feel that when you're single, it's pretty easy to stick to your boundaries because you're not, well, first of all, no one's really crossing yours and you're not really having to set any with anyone. And you tend to think like, I was just fine when I was single, like maybe that's where I belong, is just being single. But like Mercedes said, relationships are where the real work is done. And that's where you really learn how to hold space for someone and how to let someone really see you. Of course, it's easy being single. But I know for me, when it comes to boundaries and that, in relationship, in the past, I was always with, Mercedes and I are really into attachment styles. I was always with avoidance, always with narcissists. And so I was always striving to make boundaries with my partner that were just trampled on.
Right.
Now, though, that I've done the work and I've called in a healthy partner who is securely attached, I've pretty much all the work has had to do with self boundaries, like boundaries with myself, that if I get triggered, I will slow down and I will be responsive instead of reactive. I will give him, what the time he needs also for, because I know if I go to my anxious attachment, I'm like, we got to talk about it now. We got to talk about it now. We got to talk about it now. Then it's going to almost, can almost move him out of his secret attachment into avoidance. So I know that I've got to stick to my boundaries, and in order for this relationship to go smooth, it's mostly with myself. My partner currently is pretty respectful of my boundaries. The one that we both really have to strive for is that, never, we will disagree, but never fighting in front of the kids. And that takes a lot of self-control because the kids are always there, so that takes a lot of self-control. But other than that, most of the boundaries are with myself, how I'll respond, how I'll project on him, how I'll word vomit and just, put all my energy upon him if I'm feeling panic or if I'm having stress, instead of self-regulating. So my boundaries also with myself that make my relationship go smooth is, that I have some sort of daily ritual or practice where I do have self-regulation. And then also having, I know your first guest talked about this, having boundaries around my phone usage, because when we're constantly on our phones, we're flooded with information and we're not meant to be like that. We're not meant to be constantly bombarded like that. So giving myself those strict boundaries of I'm not on my phone from this time to this time, because then at dinner, I can be present with my family and I am not on edge from whatever I just saw. And sometimes everything I saw was lovely, but it's just, we're not meant to process that much.
No.
So yeah, a lot of when it comes to my current relationship, a lot of my boundaries have had to be with myself.
Right.
Again, just like the spiritual community. And
it's so true, but it's actually so helpful to hear because everyone has a different sort of path. And I think that what both of you shared is actually so beautiful and so helpful. And I'm just so glad. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for being a part of this and for really being a part of inspiring me to do this and what I did from the survey and what we're doing. And here's the big announcement is that I actually created a next gen. So it's literally a small course that I'm doing very inexpensively for all of you who are on here, for everyone who watches this after the fact. But I wanted to say thank you to you guys for inspiring me to do it. And so I'm going to drop the link, which is boundarybossnextgen.com. And it is specific to so much of the stuff that we talked about tonight. But what we did is we really just took all of the information. We had thousands of people take the survey in this particular age group and tell us what are the biggest pain points. And it's so funny because so much of what you guys are talking about are the pain points. And anyone who wants to do it, you guys go check it out, boundarybossnextgen.com. So boundarybossnextgen.com. Hold on. There you go. So, they're putting it in the link for you. So anyone who's interested, we're giving away a bunch of stuff too. So people can't afford it, where it's like a pay what you can, 27, 37, 47, because what I find is that people are very honest about what they can pay. But what I ended up including was basically all of what we talked about when I was on your show and when I talked about with the Almost 30 girls and the I Love You So Much. And really it was this group of women who inspired me to do it. So I wanted to say thank you for inspiring me and for being in my crew. And I will say to be continued. I'll tell you guys more about, I won't make you guys stay on camera, but I'll tell the rest of you, whoever wants to know more about the course, because I made it for you. So actually, there we go. There's all the information we need to know. So thank you. I'm kissing you and saying thank you so much. where can people find you before you go? I know the Magic Hour, Magic with a J
Mhm.
podcast, which is amazing and you love it, but tell us your personal.
Yeah, the Magic Hour podcast, we talk with many people like Terri. Our episode with her was amazing, and that's only a couple of weeks back. So it'll be easy for you to find it if you want to go listen to our conversation with her. We talk a lot about how to set boundaries and narcissistic, destroying boundaries and codependency and all that. And then as far as ours, I'm at the Jade Bryce on all platforms, and then Mercedes is at Mercedes Terrell.
All right. Well, thank you. To be continued. We will do a part 2 to our deep dive.
Yes.
And I appreciate you hanging around and being with us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. Bye.
Yes, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Bye. All right, you guys, this was a long night, but it was amazing. There were so many beautiful guests who came. Whatever you're interested in, I made this for you. You asked, it's now there. So check it out at boundarybossnextgen.com. So I've created 5 psychologically based videos. They're like little learning modules for you, 2 powerful experimental healing exercises from my friend Lara Riggio, gentle healing guided therapeutic meditations. So this is all part of your own journey of me sort of walking you through this process. There'll be 2 live Q&As with me where I'll be answering your questions. So we're going to be doing it over it'll start probably within the next week, and we're going to be doing it over a 5 or 6 week period of time. We're offering additional discounts if anyone on here can't do it. You can start for as little as $27, literally for the entire thing. But we also have scholarships for people who are in financial, tight situations. So 25% of everything we're doing, we're giving for scholarships. So just know that you matter. You are our next generation, and you being mentally healthy and becoming little boundary bosses is really important. You are our future leaders. Your mental health matters. How you feel matters. How you interact in the world matters. And how successful and happy and fulfilled you become has everything to do with you becoming a boundary boss. So I made this course just for you. So check it out. If you have questions, you know where to go. It's boundarybossnextgen.com. And I just want to say, I appreciate you. I see you. You can do this. I'm here to help and to lead. Please check out boundarybossnextgen.com. And thank you so much for spending so much time with me tonight, being our next gen of leaders and caring about your mental health. I'm wishing you all the mental health that I possibly can, sending you so much love. Thank you for being here. And as always, take care of you.